Now the fun begins.
Richard.
Stop! You violated the law.
Welcome back to another episode of the Gamecast, your weekly go-to podcast for all things Xbox, Xbox Game Pass, and of course, PC gaming, including news, rumors, and conversation around them damn good video games. You can catch new episodes of the show when they drop each and every Friday morning on YouTube, Apple Podcasts, Google Podcasts, Spotify, SoundCloud, and all other major podcast services. So, be sure to subscribe to us, rate us, review us, all that jazz, everything I tell you every week, wherever you get a podcast at, and follow us on Twitter at GPGC Podcast. Stay up to date with everything regarding the show, video games like, and our dope giveaways. I'm your host, as always, Travis White, aka Travelus, on most internet platforms. Joining me, as always, my partner in crime, Mike Peapack. Mike, what is good? What is going on? And naturally, as always, what have you been playing?
Yeah, for me, ain't shit changed. Just been playing actually played like 10 minutes of Infinite over the weekend, so not a whole lot of time, but a little bit of time spent playing some Infinite. I had company over for the big game Sunday. If you live under a rock or in a country that's not America, I feel like it's even pretty big outside of America, but that means I watched the Super Bowl, so that was a pretty big deal. But outside of that, I've just been playing, actually have had a very steady diet of Phasmophobia.
Nice.
Since the new update. So that's pretty much what I've been playing. Me and Adam hopped on Halo Wars for a game and then played a game of Age of Empires 2 Definitive Edition. But by and large, my steady diet has been Phasmophobia.
Nice. I just opened up Steam just to see where I'm at. In the last 2 weeks, I played 6 minutes of Halo Infinite.
Yep.
I'm wondering why. I'm wondering why, like, my mental health is so,
so much better.
Yeah, not that.
Yeah, just think, like, you could have 376.4 hours like me.
Right, not 172.
Yeah.
No, and like, I guess it's from like it's weird because when I play the game on like in casual playlists and just like social playlists and stuff like that, I don't get rattled, but at the same time too, like, I want to play ranked and competitive playlists, like, so I am going to get rattled. So, and like, that's the only way I'm going to play that game, like, not to the level, obviously, you're playing at, but like, when I play Infinite, I'm playing ranked matches outside of like, okay, yeah, I'm going to play a quick, like, match of SWAT just to like work on like my reaction real quick and like get warmed up kind of thing, and then I'll play maybe if I want to do a quick like free for all or something like that, like, but outside of that I'm playing ranked games, so like that's where I'm having all the difficulty with like everything involving network connection. Like that's where all the flaws of multiplayer are coming out right there, boom, smack dab right in the middle. If I'm wanting to play a casual experience, I love the game, it's fucking great, but from a when I want to do primarily with the game is where I'm having all these issues at that I still believe can be solved, and I still think that we can see, I don't want to even say a return to form, but I want to see this game swing back around. But
game's dead, bro.
But once again too, I mean, we're sitting here without any co-op, we're sitting here without Forge, and once again those have gotten delayed too, so it's just, it's tough, man. It's tough to,
who needs that stuff?
I mean, I would like,
you have an alpha, I guess they're calling it a beta. You have a beta build of multiplayer for a game that was supposed to come out on time. You have a version of campaign that is whatever, and you have no co-op, no Forge, no dick, no nothing. You got absolutely nothing coming from them. Like, but who needs all that kind of stuff, man? You just need a multiplayer with no anti-cheat, broken ranking system that, like, honestly, for those of you out there that want to, like, that think, oh, it's really not that bad. Competitive players need to quit crying about the mangler and this and that. Like, honestly, I went through and played quick play matches. I played about 3 of them in a row because your hidden MMR lasts from social and bot Slayer, actually. So if you make a brand new account, say you're a brand new player and you play against bots in the bot Slayer game type, and you do really well against the bots. If you play 1 or 2 games against the bots, you get a hidden MMR, which will place you against, like when you play your ranked placement matches, you'll play against high Onyx, no matter what your rank is. So to test it, I went ahead and I played a few quick play games where I literally went 0-18. Like I just kept running out, shooting at someone, making sure they saw me. They'd shoot me once, and by the time I was done, the players were so bad. They'd shoot me once. I'd look down and have to throw grenades at my feet to kill me faster to get the games over with. Lo and behold, I'm like almost ranked 2,000 in crossplay. I'm ranked like 1,900 Onyx in solo duo, and was playing ranked. And I'm getting like the lobby is just so bad because the teams are so stacked for me. And it only took 3 games for me to completely ruin my hidden MMR. So if you are complaining about your ranked games and how bad the team balancing is, go throw a couple of games of quick play. It doesn't matter. It's not really going to hurt your KD or whatever. And then come back into ranked play and you'll have a lot more fun.
Oh, there you go. Yeah, it's just ridiculous. The ranked is so, and not in a good way, it's just the MMR and the ranked is just ridiculously unbalanced in my opinion, where, you know, it should be you should have difficulty climbing to a degree. Like, it shouldn't be easy. It shouldn't be a cakewalk, but it also too shouldn't be, there needs to be more, need to be more things either taken into consideration or balanced whenever you do drop a match, lose a match, especially if you're starting a match like I am half the time, fucking 3v4. Well, yeah, I'm just going to dip. You need to, I think Overwatch, for as many problems as Overwatch has, the one thing they handle really well is how competitive play is with either rage quits or network connectivity issues or things like that, okay, if you hang on, you know, in case this was somebody who just DC'd by accident, they had network issues, they need to reboot the game, yada yada, and they're not back in whatever it is, 2 minutes. Cool. Then if you leave, you're not going to be punished. It'll count as a loss, but you won't see any of the effects of it being a loss for you. And that's a fair trade-off. Like, it's things like that that are simple, like, that could help solve this. And, you know, I find it hard, like, it's a hard balance to do things like, you know, well, if you want to stop people from, you know, rage quitting, DCing, whatever, like, oh, you got to ban them hard. Well, that can happen, but then that gets you in a pickle of, okay, what if the game itself is causing you network issues? Like, what if you having to quit the game, like I've done multiple times, I've had the game hard crash on me, or I've had, you know, random shit happen where I've needed to hard quit the game or something like that for network issues, or I'm not even able to, like, it boots me after a minute because I'm on 200 ping for some reason, like, things like that, like, then I'm getting punished for that. That shouldn't be my fault. Like, these things aren't my fault. That it's not me getting pissed off and just quitting because, you know, I'm fucking sucking or something like that. Like, it just, there's ways that this game can be saved, I still think, in my opinion, but it just seems so quiet. It just seems still so quiet. But I don't want to make this whole show about that. Yeah, it is. I don't want to make this whole show about this anyways, but I did want to point out that it was, I'm shocked that I only played 6 minutes of this game over the past 2 weeks, which it is what it is. Anyways, though, on my end, the majority of my time, for the most part, outside the stuff we've been playing, Hunt, still been playing Black Ops over on Rainbow Six, OG, been kind of jumping into a handful of things. I dipped my toe in the Lost Ark. We were actually just talking about this before the show started, that we're going to all try to hop into that tonight and play that. But kind of, it's weird because we're going to get into the rush of games that are coming out here soon. Like, I was looking at, just from a media standpoint, I put a tweet out today. I was like, thinking out loud, we got Uncharted, the movie, that is, which, as everyone knows, and I know we're talking PlayStation here too, but just video games and media in general. But, like, y'all know how big of an Uncharted fan I am. The Uncharted movie, which is going to be okay at best, but I'm still fucking hyped to go see it. It's just going to be turn my brain off, eat a lot of popcorn, and just chill. The Uncharted movie, Horizon Forbidden West, both come out tomorrow. Within the next week, the Witch Queen expansion for Destiny 2 comes out, and Elden Ring. And then a week after that, the Batman comes out. Like, this is the best stretch that we're probably going to get of, like, media shit. At least in my opinion, for right now. I'm fucking hyped. Like,
when the Batman comes out, I'll be on my last year of 20s.
That's right. That is a
Literally
factual
comes out
thing.
on my birthday.
Yep. One last ride, farewell tour of the 20s, as I've been calling it for myself.
Good Lord.
Yeah, it fucking sucks, man. Trust me, nothing makes you notice more gray hairs, the like stray gray hairs that you'll have, than when you hit 29. Like it does. It makes them stick out. Like fuck that shit. I've noticed. Like I even noticed today, like when I was washing my hands in the bathroom, I like noticed that I had a couple extra like gray hairs in my beard. Now that my beard's kind of grown out a little bit, and I'm like, yeah, I need to thin this shit out. I can't have that. No. Give me till 30. Give me this last year, and then I don't really care. I'll be a silver fox. I'm cool with that. You know, it is what it is. But in terms of main things I've been playing, I'm still plugging away through my Dark Souls Remastered playthrough. I finally got through.
And by plugging away, you mean you're getting plugged away by
yes, 100%. It took me a solid week. Yeah, actually, it took me literally a week. Now, granted, we're talking probably 3 hours worth of time when you chop it all down to it to beat Oberstein and Smog. The boss battle that is 2 bosses in one, which is a pain in the ass. That took fucking forever. But now I'm like fucking blowing through the next couple of like smaller areas and smaller bosses. But finally, kind of in the back end of that game, I wanted to try to finish it before Elden Ring. I don't know if that's going to get there for sure, but that's been a blast, and kind of one of our topics I kind of wanted to bring up involving that and Elden Ring and whatnot that we're going to talk about later in the show. But still having a blast with that. But it's I totally get why everyone loves Souls games in terms of like and we're going to kind of talk about this, but the punishing aspect of it, like I've swore up and down this fucking game, like I've never like gotten mad enough where I'm throwing a controller or anything like that, but like pissed off where I'm like, I'm just fucking done. I'm done for the night. I'm getting off, and you know, what's that?
The harpies? The
harpies were pissing me off, but this was worse than the harpies. Like the harpies were like, no, these are just like standard like enemies. They're like they're just OP for being standard enemies kind of thing. That there were issues with those, like different issues that I was still getting pissed off. But the boss for this was just completely, I was like, I'm just done. And finally beating it though, the euphoria, the rush of just serotonin to your brain of like that feeling of, I fucking did this. This game didn't want me to fucking do this, but I fucking did it. Like that feeling is so rarely found, I think, in a lot of games today that you just are so able to see why people are like, these games fucking rule. This genre that From Software really kind of, I think, created, but let's just say pioneered and made, you know, into the juggernaut that it is today, so rewarding, why so many people gravitate towards it. But yeah, outside of that too, just kind of jumping into Destiny, kind of cleaning up some stuff, trying to work my way through the end of the season that's here, and kind of clean up as much stuff as I can with the season pass and whatnot, or the battle pass or whatever you want to call it for the season, before we get into Witch Queen, which it'll be up in the air. But by the time I finish, I told myself originally I wasn't going to buy Horizon Forbidden West, but I'm probably going to now because I have no fucking, not from the fact of, I don't want to go out and like spend the money to it. I don't really care about that. It's mostly the fact of, listen, Elden Ring's coming out next week. If I'm looking at hype, I'm a little more hyped for that, which is shocking to think about, but I know that's coming out next week. I know me picking up Horizon, starting it, unless I just fucking like man it this weekend, which I'm not going to. Like, I'm going to play it a lot, but it's not going to be like all I'm probably doing unless I really get, you know, because I think Molly will want to play it with me, so we'll see how often she wants to play in there. If it's one of those things she just says, "Oh fuck it, go ahead, keep playing." But we'll see about that. It's kind of up in the air. So I don't think I'm gonna have like, I'm not gonna beat this game in a week probably. Like it's too big, I think, with my free time and whatnot and balancing everything else. Like it's not where I have a feeling Elden Ring is going to be that game where like, yes, that's all I'm doing kind of thing. So, but at the same time too, all the reviews, that's the whole reason behind this. It's getting good press out on this game, like, or in games in general. Reviews are the ultimate marketing material for a good game. Like, if that's what you're looking to, get out of the game, that I'm just like, fuck. Not from the sense of like, I don't want to play it. It's just, I know that if I don't at least start it now and try to get through it, I'm gonna get spoiled on it.
Right.
Just with how I am with me, somebody who loves third-person action, narrative-driven games. Like, I just know I'm going to get spoiled on that. So, fuck it. You know, I'm going to pick that up and fucking play that. But Elden Ring's right around the corner. So it's just kind of like, there's just too much shit, and it's trying to balance all that. I'm not good. I'm one of those people, unless it's like a Phasma, you know, Siege, or, you know, even Hunt, like things like that I could pop in and out of pretty easily. Like, I'm usually a one-game type of person. Like, if I'm starting this game, I'm beating it, then moving on, kind of thing, unless it's like a live service style game. But anyways, I digress, Mike. Let's get into the meat of our show. And only a couple big topics. One kind of breaking, and it's not necessarily breaking. It's just like, it is going to be I think the next week going to be a conversational topic. But, and really both of these are, but let's start with this, I want to say, quote unquote, smaller one. And what I was kind of talking about before and hinting at before when it comes to Soulsborne and stuff like that. Really, naturally, as another Soulsborne game that is coming out, the conversation around difficulty in games and difficulty in these games, and, you know, traditionally from software games not having difficulty options, it's starting to come back again. And even with Sifu over on PlayStation 5, like, another game that is being really praised for, you know, some of the things it's doing mechanically as a game, it's kind of the same way, which granted now the developers have come out and said, hey, we're adding an easy mode and a hardcore mode. Like, okay, so like that kind of, well, then changes the meta of the game and everything like that, what people were kind of praising, but also does help out the kind of thing that people have been having issues with of, man, I want this game to be quote unquote more accessible and things like that. And are kind of pointing the, you know, finger at potentially gatekeeping this game through its difficulty. But I kind of want to talk about that a little bit, because now that I'm kind of like balls deep into like Souls games and stuff like that, and like actually finding it, they got the hook in me now. I get it now. I'm all in, you know. I think the conversation is really interesting heading into Elden Ring with what really, I guess, From Software, how they've changed a little bit with their wording and how they're approaching this game, how they're approaching difficulty in games, and really just kind of wanted to talk about that idea of difficulty in games, you know, really right now in the modern landscape of the games industry, and what that kind of, you know, sets for us. And Ryan Dinsdale over at IGN had a pretty good write-up on this, and just kind of the approach of, you know, what From Software is doing to kind of balance difficulty throughout the game without actually putting a quote-unquote slider in there or a difficulty option, and just make it, hey, this is the game we're developing, and this is how we want you to experience it, kind of thing. So, like I said, link in the description. Go over there, give Ryan a click over at IGN. From Software says that it's seeking to balance Elden Ring's difficulty with one particularly frustrating network test among the elements being tuned for the final version. But there will be some difficult bosses, some of which will reportedly rank among the most difficult the series has ever seen. Speaking with Gamer Braves, Elden Ring producer Yoshiro Kitao covered a variety of options pertaining to the final release, which is due later this month. Among them, he discussed the difficulty balance, saying that the network tests showcase boss Margit the Fell Omen, was, quote, just too hard. Nevertheless, Elden Ring will have a myriad of optional bosses to test the skills of top players, some of which will be very difficult. Quote, in terms of bosses that are unessential and optional and hidden, there are some of these that we have deliberately increased the challenge for those players who want to seek out this kind of experience. Hopefully, if you're that way inclined, you can seek out some really tough challenges hidden away in the world, Kyoto said. From Software's Souls games have had a long history of very difficult optional bosses. They include the likes of Bloodborne's Martyr Logarius, who will test your ability to parry attacks with heavy punishing mistakes. The DLC bosses are even nastier with expansions like the Old Hunters, notably featuring some of the toughest bosses in From Software's history. As Elden Ring is open world and From Software's biggest game to date, there may be more of the secret bosses than ever before. Game director Hitaki Miyazaki recently commented that he expects more players to finish Elden Ring than the studio's previous game, perhaps because its biggest challenge are off the beaten path. Elsewhere in the interview, Katayo addresses issues like the HUD and other challenges from the network test. It's worth reading in full if you obviously want to jump over there and check that out, and I can put that in the description as well. But kind of thinking about this out loud, Mike, where do you right now, like we were just talking, as to me being 29, you almost 29, at this point in our lives with video games, I like to think you enjoy traditionally, quote unquote, more difficult challenges in games than I do. And granted, I'm getting a little bit more inclined to pick up more challenging games and kind of tackle more challenging games that I find quote unquote fair. But where do you kind of stand right now with this philosophy with difficulty really in games? Like, do you think most games coming out, need to be more quote unquote accessible, if that's what we're wanting to kind of approach it as? Because I like to think that, I want games to be as accessible for people at, in any capacity, whether that's, people who have disabilities or anything like that, that kind of have that barrier to them. But at the same time, I'm also one of those people that I do like to side with developers' vision for games. And I want them to be able to produce the kind of art that they want to provide us that may have a specific message or meaning to it that can only be experienced one way. So where do you kind of stand with everything with difficulty in gaming right now?
I guess, while we're kind of in this direction, just because you brought it up just recently, and it's not something that I really took consideration of, is, I try to be an empathetic person. I try to put myself in other people's shoes. And I guess, what starts to come to mind is like, I didn't even consider like handicapped individuals or accessibility, like people who need accessibility features in games. That's not something that was really on my radar. And I like to be empathetic and think that maybe I could know how they feel. But at the same time, I like to try to not assume that I would know how someone would feel in this situation.
Right. No, 100%.
With that, I don't really know where to begin to even get on a wavelength that I could understand that. So I'll go, I've been kind of historically on the side of like, there's just some video games that just might not be for you. And that's okay. Like, it might be okay that maybe Elden Ring won't be for you, or maybe a Soulsborne game just isn't for you. And not every game has to be for every person.
100%.
I think from a studio standpoint, they would like everybody to play their games, obviously, for monetary reasons. But at the same time, if you don't like Dark Souls games, you're obviously not going to play them. And there's a reason why you don't like them. I was born, a long time ago, obviously, and now I'm
fucking old fogey.
I grew up like playing NES games. And there were some games that I didn't even play Battletoads as a kid, but there are games, NES games, that are just very, very difficult.
Oh yeah,
you might never beat them. You might never beat Punch-Out, but that doesn't mean you're gonna stop playing them, because it's rewarding in that sense. And I'm not trying to say that every game nowadays needs to be like an NES game in design, where it's like impossible to beat or anything, but at the same time, there are just some things that aren't going to be for you. For instance, I haven't really got back into The Witcher because I was still competing in Halo. That I've taken about a week and a half off of Halo and have felt great since. So I don't know that I foresee myself getting back into Halo per se, but if I do, I don't want to start playing The Witcher and then, just be like, oh, I'm back to competing in Halo again, and kind of lose all that effort and all that drive that I put in towards The Witcher. All this is to say, like, there are just some games that aren't for me, and I know that, and I don't hold it against anyone when these games aren't for me. If you're someone who might not enjoy Soulsborne games, you might not enjoy the difficulty levels and everything. I totally get that. But at the same time, there is going to be a lot of content creators that are going to produce content on this game, whether it be through Twitch streams, whether you maybe want to, do, like, I'm sure there's going to be like Let's Plays, or there's going to be people that produce content on YouTube also. And I have found myself going to, like, I didn't know I was going to like Phasmophobia until I watched it on YouTube and Twitch and thought, man, that looks really interesting. I didn't know I was going to love Resident Evil 7 until I saw it on YouTube or Twitch. Like,
Mhm.
I've been a Resident Evil fan per se, but not really. It was kind of a blind spot of mine, and I've admitted that. And content creators kind of woke me up to the error of my ways. Excuse me, hold on. All right, I think I'm good.
That a boy.
So, with all that being said, I think that there are going to be some games out there that just aren't certain people's styles.
Mhm.
There's nothing wrong with that.
No.
I think they have gone a little bit in a unique direction by saying some of the most difficult bosses are going to be off the beaten path. That's probably the most reasonable way I could really see someone implementing some type of difficulty into the game that doesn't affect core gameplay.
Mhm.
Because I've said, Legendary Halo 1 is a fun challenge. Halo 2 is a bit of an annoyance and a lot of an annoyance and a pain in the ass because of the jackals. But also, I don't really like games that make difficulty based off of, every single Covenant enemy is going to shoot at the Master Chief first, and then they'll shoot at everyone else once he's dead.
Mhm.
Because that's kind of the way that they did Legendary, is like, you're going to take the most damage, which kind of makes sense. But in a firefight, I don't think every little grunt and jackal is going to have the wherewithal to only shoot at Master Chief. Like, it just doesn't make sense. And like, those types of things feel like cop-outs to me when you're talking about difficulty. And I don't want games to be cheap on their difficulty, which is something that someone who plays a Soulsborne game should probably watch their tongue, because a lot of people would probably be like, what are you talking about? All the enemies in those games are cheap.
Yeah.
Like, I'm not trying to say, like...
Oh, trust me, the amount of times that, like, even with the Oberstein and Smog battle, fucking the amount of times that, like, how you would approach it, and I'm sure Souls veterans are sitting there like, oh, this fucking noob, kind of like talking about how you want to approach it and things like that. Like, what's nice about those games is, even though they are designed for you to experience in a very certain way, it's almost fair. It's almost like, I really want to say it's like a chode. It's fucking wide. It's small, but it's wide. Like, as fucked up as that sounds. I know that's a horrible analogy, but it's like the width of what you're able to do within that certain parameter is really interesting, because the bosses will do whatever to just fucking annihilate you. And I mean that in the fact of, in terms of cheap design, you may think, and 90% of the time, if you go behind a pillar during that battle, you're going to be able to have the enemies, they don't clip through, like, the asset of the enemy running into the asset of the environment in terms of the pillar. Those two are both solid objects, so they're going to, in their tracking path towards you when they're trying to attack, if you're right behind it, they're going to run into that and just kind of try to keep running to it until you move out into another direction. So you're able to center them in one point, and typically, if they attack you, it's going to provide you cover in a sense.
Mm-hmm.
Except maybe, a certain point in the pillar where, if Oberstein's spear goes through it, you could technically die. And that's cheap, because it's not supposed to do that, but it did. And his attacks are, no matter how high your vitality is, it's going to take away half of it for the most part. Like, so it's stuff like that. Not to interrupt you, but like, yeah, it is based around like, shit, you have to find a way to do this no matter what. And you could do it in any way you want, but you're not going to be able to turn down the difficulty on this. Like, you just have to figure it out. They're going to be cheap. If you want to be cheap, that's fine. But like, just fucking figure it out. Like, not to be, I hate using the phrase, but you got to get good kind of thing.
Yeah. And a game comes to mind, Ninja Gaiden for the Xbox, not the original NES, but Ninja Gaiden for the Xbox was a game that
you mean Ninja Gaiden, as in, are you going to, that eventually became released as Ninja Gaiden Black, that we have an episode on?
Yes. Yeah. So
as in go back and listen to that episode.
Yeah, Ninja Gaiden, the first one, came out on original Xbox, didn't have a difficulty meter. Then they released Ninja Gaiden Black, which is pretty universally like the preferred game, but not just because of the difficult, like, not just because there's a Ninja Dog difficulty on it,
Mm-hmm.
that if you die like 3 or 4 times in a row, it'll ask you, hey, do you want to go down to Ninja Dog? And the way that game worked was pretty interesting. Like, I found myself having a lot of trouble with the one final boss when I was a little bit younger. So, I turned it down to Ninja Dog difficulty, learned the ropes of how to defeat said boss, and then when I turned the difficulty back up, beat him like first try.
Mm-hmm.
And it's like, oh, that's pretty cool. And with Ninja Gaiden Black, when I speedrun it, I cheese the shit out of bosses because it's what you have to do in a speedrun. But I take pride and joy in, like, there's not a cookie cutter one-off, like, easy way to beat every single enemy, every single boss. I think that's relatively interesting and pretty fun, personally.
Mm-hmm.
But that's not to say that everyone's going to feel that way. But as far as, like, difficulty sliders are concerned, I understand the community out there that's like, please don't add difficulty sliders, please don't dumb this down, blah, blah, blah. Then I also understand the other side that's like, hey, can you make it so everyone can play the game?
Yeah.
Like, it doesn't make any sense that you guys are going to cut potential fans and things of that nature off simply because you guys won't budge on a difficulty meter. And both of them make a whole lot of sense, and I see both sides of the coin. For me, I'm strictly on, like, some games just aren't going to be for you, and
Mm-hmm.
that's really okay.
Yeah.
It is. Like, you wouldn't go play a shooting game if you know you hate them, so why are you going to play a Soulsborne game if you know you hate them?
Or,
that's just kind of my point of view.
Yeah, no. And I definitely agree that, I'm glad people, like, there are games that I like that I know, like, most people are like, oh, cringe, or like, oh, that's not, like Uncharted. Like, I have a fucking Uncharted tattoo. I understand it's just Indiana Jones. But, like, I love that about it. Like,
has anyone that complains about Indiana Jones ever seen been to Disney World and seen, like, the exhibit at Hollywood Studios on how they did all the stunts and shit?
yeah, like, fucking...
Like, shit's pretty cool.
Right, yeah, like, it's just, like, there are action... It's like Fast and Furious. Like, listen, I understand Fast and Furious is dog shit. Like, it's not good. It's campy. Like, it is. But... that's what I like about it. It's just fast cars. You turn your brain off and you just fucking laugh at some of the crazy shit they do. Like, yeah. Like, and then you're gonna make fun of fucking Vin Diesel talking about family, and somehow having all these convicts at his fucking all these convicts at a barbecue somehow without the police like somehow showing up to his fucking house.
Or moreover, the police are complicit. And
they're like, oh, fried chicken, I'm gonna come. like,
oh, we need all these convicts that are really good at driving cars to do this. Like,
we're here to arrest you. Wait, are those scalloped potatoes? Oh, well, that'd be me. I fucking love scalloped potatoes. God damn it. But like at the same time, like I like trying different things, and if I wouldn't have tried a Soulsborne game, because I always thought, and really just difficult games in general, like I always thought that I'm like, you know what, I'm just not into that. There are some games that like I like challenging things, like Uncharted, for example. I always play Uncharted games now, really, since I've gotten into Uncharted. Like, usually I try to platinum the games and get the platinum trophy and whatnot, or achievements, whatever. Like, I'm one of those people, so I will play through on crushing difficulty. But when I first started playing those games, like, I go to those games more or less because I enjoy the narrative of those games. I enjoy the world that you're showing me and the style of game that is. But at the same time, too, I enjoy a challenge afterwards, after I soak in the story and enjoy it, just like The Last of Us and things like that. Like, I do like going back and playing a harder difficulty, like Master Mode on Breath of the Wild. Like, after I soak in that world for a while, I go back and I play through on a harder difficulty. But there are games that I, like, growing up, like, I remember there were times where I'd get stuck in fucking Morrowind on certain, like, quests, and I'm just like, I don't have, like, even then, now granted, as an adult, like, looking back on how you do, like, assess those games and really how much of a CRPG that game was, like, yeah, I probably just didn't have the correct build of a character to go and do that. Like, so, but me as a kid, I'm like, well, I just want to keep playing through it. I want to get to the next thing. I'm just going to turn the difficulty down. Like, that is nice to have those accessibility options. But at the same time, though, you know, that isn't necessarily the way that game was intended to be played. And that's okay, but if you, like, now that I understand and, like, have got the Souls bug in terms of, yes, the loop that these games produce, the like the gist, the I don't want to say the gimmick, but like the thing that pulls you into these games. I get that. It's that euphoria you do get when you finally conquer something that is so fucking difficult. You're banging your head off a wall, metaphorically, I'd hope, that, you know, took you forever to fucking beat, and you finally did it. You finally pulled out a way to make it work. You clutched up, you quote unquote got good. That euphoria after drives you forward, then you're instantly like, I'm ready to take, I want to see what's next. If that's, I got a couple more, like, and granted, I'm using a guide playing the game because I don't necessarily, like, I wish there was a little more direction in at least Dark Souls Remastered. Like, I wish there was a little more direction in Dark Souls to help me kind of point me in the right direction, at least. Doesn't have to be like, hey, you have to go that way, but like, hey, like, potentially you might want to go talk to this person. Outside of that, it's like, you just are dropped into the world and you're just like, okay, start going somewhere, like, kind of thing. But more or less, like, it makes me want to go and just like move on to the next thing. It makes me want to, experience that. And if I wouldn't have tried that, I would have never known. I would have never known that, yeah, I do like Soulsborne games. Like, I always felt that intimidation by them. But at the same time too, saying that, I see the side of it is I don't think I would feel as great as I do about these games if I didn't have that euphoric moment of really getting good or getting past a really tough boss. Like, this game was specifically designed that way for you to experience that and have that feeling of that old school feeling of, like you're saying, games like the original Ninja Gaiden on NES, like games like, I mean, fuck, just name a specific, an NES specific game that you want to talk about, later levels of even like Super Mario 1. Like, we're talking about like games that are, hey, you die, you're done. Like, that's it. Like, still based off the ideology of these quote unquote toys are made to pump quarters into, where now people play those style of games because they just love the challenge, knowing that, hey, I could spend, what would be the equivalent of a fucking like Santa bag full of quarters on this game that I could just play forever and keep going back to and keep playing. And it feeds that, that hook that it puts in you of that difficulty. It's really interesting though that, and we see this come up, like, we saw it come up, especially too, I think when I saw it the most come up when Sekiro came out, and a lot of people were saying, man, this looks really interesting. Man, I'm really a big fan of XYZ game that is similar to that, and the aesthetic of, feudal Japan. Like, I'm really interested in, I want to, like, the lore of this, in the ambiance of this game, of, and the everything about this game looks really interesting, but I don't like the difficulty. I want to be able to play this game and experience this game and really have a, really like soak into it, but I don't like it being too hard. Like, I want to, and we slowly started to kind of see that seep into other games as we've gone on. And it's really, really, really interesting to see how From Software is not necessarily like, they've said like, we want people to experience our game. Like you said, Mike, I'm sure from a financial standpoint, obviously every developer wants everyone in the world to play their game, because that means they're selling a ton of it and people enjoy it and they want to get more of it. And then the sequel comes and then, like, people want that. They want everyone to experience their game. But From Software has also been pretty vocal of like, we designed this game for not for a specific audience, but more so for we designed this game specifically to be challenging, and turning that or like adjusting that would be detrimental to the vision of this game and what you get out of it. And not in the sense of, we don't want you to play, or, and like you were saying, it's a different conversation when it comes to, hey, this is somebody who has a physical handicap that unfortunately prevents them from playing this game, or things like that. Like, for me at least, there's a different conversation to be had with that I feel like could be much more impactful of, okay, well, maybe let's try to find some way to do it. And because I'm all about, I still think The Last of Us 2 has one of the best examples of accessibility in games. And Steve Saylor, the blind gamer, over on YouTube and Twitch and Twitter and everything, go check him out. He actually just joined, I believe, Raven Software, the Call of Duty developer, to be the accessibility, if I can spit it out, coordinator or whatever kind of position it is. But he's going to basically be the consulting end of accessibility on their games. And he did the same thing with The Last of Us Part 2. And seeing some of the options that were given for accessibility in The Last of Us Part 2 it's incredible. That I want to see so many games have. But it is that kind of tightrope, that it's just hard to really kind of think of, it's one of those things so many people want to have their cake and eat it too. And it might just be the easiest answer of, like you said, Mike, maybe some games aren't for everyone, and that's okay. But just because they're difficult doesn't mean that. And even Michael Huber brought this up on the most recent Frame Trap over at Easy Allies, like talking about Sifu. He was like, if you're, like I said, take what you think of accessibility when you talk about that in terms of, handicaps and things like that. Take it from the sense of, this is somebody who is fully able to play this game at the full capacity and everything like that. It's one of those things that, oh, well, how many times did you fail? I couldn't beat this boss, the second boss in the game, so I just, decided to give up on it. Oh, like, that stinks that it just didn't click with you. How many times did you try to fight them? Only twice. And he was like, well, you're not really trying then. He's like, not being like, oh, get good, yada, yada, but like, games like this, like really with anything in life, like if you want to get good at it, you have to practice it. It's going to take some. Most people just don't walk up and like, most people never touch a baseball bat in their life. Don't just walk into a major league, field and hit a home run like off of major league pitchers. They don't. So it takes time. It takes decades, perfecting your craft to get there. And just with anything, like if you want to get good at something, you have to, practice. You have to try it, keep trying, and take notes and mental notes and learn. And I just think it's really interesting of like so many times I think with this games, and I think that's why you're seeing from Software, especially Miyazaki, coming out and saying like, I think this is going to be the game that is finished the most from our lineage of Soulsborne games, because it seems like they're trying to find this perfect balance of, if you want more challenges, they're there, but we're talking challenges in terms of like difficult, like super hard, high-end challenges. They're there, but if you stick to the golden path or whatever you want to call it, it might not be as difficult if you put the time in and actually beat it, because we're giving you more options to tackle this game, not necessarily degrading the integrity of our vision of the game. And I think that's really, really interesting to think about. Mike, any kind of final things on this before we move into the second part of the episode? Just kind of, I know I rambled a little bit. I tend to, but I didn't want to cut you off too soon on it.
The only thing I really wanted to say or add to it is like you said, you don't pick up a baseball bat the first time and you're not hitting dingers. You don't pick up a golf club. I mean, God, if anyone golfs out there, you don't just pick up a golf club and start striping at 300 yards. You don't like kind of see how to do an integral, and you're all of a sudden just an integral master. And obviously Calc 2 is just a cakewalk for you. Like, none of that is true. And I agree. Like, you can't just try something twice and then say, oh, I just can't do it. Mm-hmm. Well, okay, then you're not going to get very far in life. Like, I hate to be one of those assholes, but like, you're just not going to succeed in anything you do if you're only going to try it twice and, call it a day. Unless it's like some hardcore drug, like, right. I don't recommend trying it over and over again until you have fun with it. But like,
please don't do crack.
Yeah, but at the same time, like, I just don't want people to think that like everything's supposed to be easy. And,
and two, kind of playing off that, and I promise I'll let you finish that thought, but just because my ass will forget it. But what you're kind of saying though, like, when it comes to difficulty, yeah, like I totally agree. But at the same time, it is okay to not like, there's so many games that just sitting here looking at like my fucking bookcase full of games that I have over the years, like, there are games on here that I bought and played a couple hours of and just fell off. Like, just because I'm like, it wasn't for me. I don't feel bad that I spent the money on it, because me personally, I still want to, like, it may not be for me, but I'm glad I'm glad somebody's piece of art out there exists, and I'm happy to support that, unless it's like fucking Nazi propaganda or anything like that. But you get what I mean. Where I'm okay with that, but some other people aren't, in the sense of, fuck, I spent $60 on this game, 70 now, or whatever you want to call, I've spent X amount on this game and I didn't get my money out of it. I understand that at the same time too. Like,
right.
People have different values on that. Sorry, I promise I won't interrupt you to finish your thought. You're good.
And no, like, I think, there are people who make content for certain groups or, certain target audiences, and video games are no different. Like, I don't know where people became so entitled as to think that all games should be A, easy for them to beat, B, simple. Like, I just don't know where everyone gets off on having that type of idea, because, if I heard who your favorite band was, if your favorite band is, just for memes, we'll say it's Nickelback, like, if your favorite band's Nickelback, and no matter what anyone else's opinion is on them, like, if you enjoy them, that's great for you.
Fuck yeah.
I don't like when people bash people, for being whatever, but, like, basically me coming up and hearing that your favorite band's Nickelback, how, like, ridiculous would it be for me to be like, I think they should fucking play country? Like, I don't know what the fuck they're doing playing rock music. These motherfuckers need to go to Nashville and play country, because they suck at rock. Like, it's not that far of a stretch for me to say, like, oh, you coming in and saying every video game should be the way you like it. It's almost the same argument. Or, oh, whoever made all the Insidious movies, like, that director or that writer who writes horror movies, like, that motherfucker should be making dramas. I don't know what the fuck he's doing making horrors. Like, this guy's a clown. Like, fucking just make dramas, dude. It's not that fucking hard. Like, that's kind of the same thing people are saying when they're like, just make it easy and make it so I can beat it. That's the way I see it, is like, it's none of your fucking business if it's someone else's art. If you don't like it, you don't like it. That's fine. But it doesn't mean that they should be they should have to change their product. And unfortunately, being from America, I'm someone who, although I think certain people are completely and totally fucking asinine and ridiculous, that's part of being an American, is understanding that, like, they have freedom of speech. So if they want to sit there and spew garbage, like, you might have your own opinions on someone who's a hot topic right now, Joe Rogan, but silencing him isn't going to help anyone who is against that person, because all you're doing is validating his audience and saying, like, oh, there's a reason they don't want him to be heard, because he's fucking right. He's right. All these other people are wrong. And that's kind of a really roundabout way for me to get to saying, like, if it's just not your thing, it's not your art either, so don't worry about it.
No, definitely. And I'm right there with you. It's definitely, you're just playing into it at that point. And but even though it's one of those things where it's like, yes, at the same time, you have the right to say those things and all of that. It sucks. Like, I may not fucking like to listen to that person, or, and I have no real fucking opinion on Joe Rogan one way or another, but, but point being,
you have the right to say that shit, but it doesn't make you any less of an asshole.
Right. Exactly.
As long as you know you're an asshole, that's fine.
It's like the meme that Adam and I have shared before, where it's like, when Trump got banned on Twitter, it's like, yeah, he's allowed to say that shit, but also Facebook or Twitter is they're allowed to, they have a terms of service and everything like that. Like, you could say that, but, like, and you're legally allowed to say that, but that doesn't mean that the person hearing that is also not allowed to think that you're an asshole and show you the door. Right. Like, they're allowed to do that too. Like, they can not listen to you. Like, you're allowed to say it. That doesn't mean somebody's going to listen, and doesn't mean that you're, not an asshole. But point being, I agree with what you're saying. But anywho, Mike, let's head on to our last news story for the week and topic. And this one literally popped up, like, right before we went live, and I just wanted to kind of comment on it a little bit, because I think this is going to be one of those ones that really, both of these, since Elden Ring is going to come out next week and whatnot, but I think this story is also going to kind of be part of the conversation, because it has been part of the conversation for a little while, that it's just natural this is going to come up and somebody would talk to them. And it's interesting that they're now saying it, but this comes from Video Game Chronicle and Andy Robson over there writing, saying Ubisoft says it can stay independent, but, quote, would receive or review any buyout offers. CEO Yves Guillemot responds to speculation that the Assassin's Creed publisher could be sold. So, as I said, Andy Robson over at VGC wrote this. Link in the description. Go over there. Give Andy a click. He does great work over there. Ubisoft has told investors it believes it can remain independent amid the recent trend of consolidation in the games industry. M&A activity in the games industry hit a record $85 billion in 2021 and has been forecasted to reach $150 billion this year, with huge deals such as Microsoft's acquisition of Activision Blizzard and Take-Two's buyout of Zynga have already been announced in 2022's opening months. Asked in an earnings call on Thursday if Ubisoft believed it would be able to guarantee access to the various gaming platforms it releases its games on in the future, should it resist any of the consolidation happening in the industry, CEO Yves Guillemot said he believed it would. Quote, "We will continue to have access to all those platforms because all of the platforms need great content. If we are continuing to do great content like we do today, we will be able to access all the platforms," he says. Quote, "If we look at Nintendo, we have the number one third-party publisher on it. Nintendo is interested in everything we do, and we are even developing games with their brands, so the collaboration exists and is very fruitful." The exec said he believes Ubisoft could remain independent, but that any offers to buy the company would be reviewed in the interest of its shareholders. Quote, "We have always taken decisions in the interest of our shareholders, which are our employees, players, and shareholders. Or stakeholders, I'm sorry, which are our employees, players, and shareholders. Ubisoft can remain independent. We have the talent, the financial scale, and a large portfolio of original IPs," Guillemot added. Having said that, if there were any offers to buy us, the board of directors would, of course, review it in the interest of the stakeholders. CFO Frederic Dugat added later in the call, "We will not speculate on why people haven't made any offers," Guillemot also added, "or if any offers were made." Doug continued, "What we can say is we have high-value assets, we have the scale to remain independent and create very meaningful value in our future because we have scale in terms of our workforce, engineering, technology, IPs, and engaged communities. That's why we are able to serve so many platforms today with such high-quality content. Of course, we won't speculate anymore on any potential interest in buying Ubisoft. Ubisoft is one of the biggest third-party games publishers in the world and owns brands such as Assassin's Creed, Rainbow Six, Far Cry, and Just Dance." So it's interesting to say, and also too, he mentions as well about how Jeff Keighley at one point, I guess I could just continue it, but discussing industry consolidation earlier this month, influential figure Jeff Keighley suggested more major deals could be announced sooner rather than later. The Games Award creator tweeted, quote, "Have heard from multiple people, as you might suspect, there are a few other big video game deals in final stages of negotiations. It's going to be an interesting year." This obviously comes on the heels of not only Activision Blizzard being bought by Microsoft, but Bungie being bought by Sony as well. It's interesting now that it kind of seems like almost seems like Thanos with the fucking Infinity Gauntlet, going after all the fucking stones, just being like, that one's done, that one's done, that one's done, this one's next. Like, I think it's natural at this point for so many people to just be like, well, yeah, Ubisoft's going to get bought. Like, and water is wet, like, because of not only, I mean, really, Bethesda set the precedent of, yes, a quote unquote large third party publisher can get gobbled up pretty quickly by one of the large, like, by a first party publisher, and can go first party and is willing to move from their independence and do that. And like I keep saying, it makes those rumors and, kind of speculation that EA was in talks with Microsoft, or Microsoft inquired about EA, very much solidified that I believe that happened, like, because of how the landscape looks right now. So just kind of like, obviously, Mike, like I said, this is, I think, going to be a topic of conversation kind of moving forward, and has really been since Activision's acquisition. But I mean, I think it's inevitable that we see another major entity like a Ubisoft and EA, somebody kind of get gobbled up here soon. But, it kind of goes off of what we've been talking about. I mean, is that kind of consolidation good? I mean, should Ubisoft want to say, like, should we still have these large scale entities while we have issues with them? I have issues with how certain franchises are handled with Ubisoft that I have a lot of, fond memories with, and, memories that I still have with, that I'm making still to this day with Assassin's Creed and Rainbow Six and whatnot. But even with like things like companies like EA, all the issues we have with EA and their IP and things like that and how they handle that, is consolidation the right move for that even?
Yeah.
I know that's kind of a bigger, ball of wax too. We don't have to get into that deeply, but mostly just, where does Ubisoft, could they even fit in with all this?
I definitely remember a week or two ago me saying that Ubisoft is probably next.
It's like in fucking Step Brothers whenever Will Smith's getting his ass spanked and what's his name, Robert Duvall turns around and he's like, "You're next, mister." "Yes, sir."
Literally.
"Yes, sir."
It's like the meme that was going around with Area 51 when Christian Bale's in American Psycho.
Yeah.
With the pointing and the "You're next, pal."
Yes.
That's kind of what I thought about
Ubisoft. Also, I think the reason why I called it was Richard Jenkins, not Robert Duvall. Got those two mixed up. The dad's name in that was Robert Doback. That's probably why. How could I forget Doback? Anyways, wasn't Robert Duvall. I didn't want to get called out for that. God forbid. But
I mean, I think it makes sense for Ubisoft to kind of posture like this. And in a business sense, if they did get an offer from someone else, this isn't necessarily this isn't behaving in what in the business world is known as good faith.
Mm-hmm.
If you've gotten an offer from PlayStation for $65 million and you don't think it was adequate, or you don't think it's what you deserve, so you go ahead and you go public like this isn't acting in good faith in a negotiation tactic. This is 100% a bad faith tactic. So I don't know that Ubisoft would be so crazy to go out there and just spew this information out, because you're kind of burning that bridge. I don't think that they've been offered or anything yet, but I will say that all of a sudden, when you don't have to worry about dollar signs and you don't have to worry about games of service, maybe you finally make a good Rainbow Six game.
Mm-hmm.
I mean, I'm just going to throw it out there. The last few Rainbow Six games they've made have been such fucking pig shit, including Siege. It's fucking garbage. Like, maybe you'll finally make a good Rainbow Six game when you don't have to worry about how much money you're bringing in to keep the doors open. Mm-hmm. Maybe you'll make a good Assassin's Creed, or God forbid, get the fuck away from it for a little bit, because how many more what are you going to do? Assassin's Creed Revolutionary War next? Are you going to try to fucking stop John Wilkes Booth? Like,
that was Assassin's Creed 3, damn it.
Okay, well, yeah, exactly. That's the point. What the fuck are you going to do next? Are you going to Atlantis that doesn't even exist? Like,
hey, that already happened. That already happened, man. Where the hell are you going to go next?
Are you going to try to save Amelia Earhart from the fucking...
Okay, I don't think they've touched that one yet. I don't think they've touched that.
Okay, exactly. That's my point. You don't need to keep doing this shit anymore when you are, acquired by someone else. That's my whole opinion on it. I don't want to get too deep into it because I'm going to sound like a fucking maniac, but like, Ubisoft has so much promise, and it has some of my favorite IPs of all time tied under it, but you're just fucking releasing Sam Fisher as a downloadable character in games that you have to pay for. Is just such a spit in the face to people.
It took all of this just to get a remake, not a new entry, a remake of Splinter Cell. All of this. I'm right there with you. I'm right there with you.
I don't have much else to say about it other than just get your shit together, and hopefully they get acquired by someone. And if it's good guy Microsoft, and I'm using that in kind of a tongue-in-cheek way, but if it's good guy Microsoft, hopefully they say, "Hey, motherfuckers, how about you make a good Rainbow Six game? We don't want a game of service. You don't need to worry about the dollar signs anymore. Just make a good fucking game, dude. That's it."
Yeah, and realistically, at the end of the day, too, that's how, when you look at something like Game Pass, I mean, that right there alone is the easiest way to be like, okay, cool, you're good. You don't have to worry about anything. Like, we have Game Pass that'll take care of all of the, the live service end of anything. Like, you don't have to worry about, like, as long as we have people on Game Pass, they're going to be playing this game. Or, like, we're going to have people playing this game. Like, you're good. Or, hey, go free to play, and there you don't even have to, like, you don't have the pressure of going free to play and needing the monetization. You have that with us. Like, we can make a good balance kind of thing. But at the end of the day too, like, I understand the people who are like, you know, at the same time, I don't want a ton of consolidation. I want, you know, it's kind of like our country's going. Like, pretty soon it's just going to be rich people and poor people. The middle class keeps getting smaller and smaller and smaller. And that's where I don't want to see the AA space kind of go away, where we don't have games like It Takes Two out there. We don't have games that are at that level of, you know, they're either going to be large-scale AAA first-party titles or small indie titles. And I feel like there needs to be still room for that middle ground, that random, the crew that comes out from Ubisoft that's like, yeah, it's the crew. Like, I'm glad somebody out there likes it, obviously. They keep making it, but, like, you know, how many people do, you know, kind of thing. But I want that to exist. So at the same time, too, that could be possible with a Microsoft or whatever, or a Tencent or an Amazon or whoever would buy them. But to be honest, thinking out loud, with how friendly Ubisoft is with Google and Stadia, I mean, Stadia's dead, but they would probably be open to, you know, if Amazon reached out and said, hey, for Luna or whatever, like, come to us. Like, we'll put you on everything else, but all your content comes day one to us and this and that. And I don't know. But it'll be interesting to kind of talk about because, like I said, I think this is going to be, it's just going to keep getting more and more ratcheted up as we keep going on with, you know, more people coming, more and more publishers wanting to kind of enter into that, you know, hey, we want to have somebody else kind of handle the back end of this. We want to focus on games again. So we shall see, Mike. With that being said, I think that's going to do it for episode this week. Why don't you tell people, Mike, where they can find you on the internet? Talk about everything we talked about, Elden Ring, From Software, difficulty, all that jazz, Ubisoft potentially being bought up. Where can people find you to talk about all this on the internet?
You can find me on Twitter at TOYSXLDIER. That's Toy Soldier and the second O is an X. Or you can find me on Twitch at MP_Toy Soldier.
Nice. And as always, I'm your host, Travis White, aka Travlis, on most internet platforms, including at Travlis_ on Twitter. That's TRAVLESS_. You can also find me streaming time to time on twitch.tv/Travlis_, same as Twitter. And if you want to play some games with me, you can do so on Xbox Live, Steam, all that jazz. It's just regular old Travlis. That's TRAVLESS. And this, ladies and gentlemen, has been your newest episode of the Game Pass Gamecast, your weekly go-to podcast for all things Xbox Game Pass, and of course, PC gaming, including news, rumors, and conversation around them damn good video games. You can catch new episodes of the show when they drop each and every Friday morning on YouTube, Apple Podcasts, Google Podcasts, Spotify, SoundCloud, and all other major podcast services. So be sure to subscribe to us, rate us, review us, all that jazz I tell you every week, wherever you get a podcast at. And follow us on Twitter at GPGC Podcast. Stay up to date with everything regarding the show, video games like, and our dope giveaways. Mike, it's going to do it for our episode this week. Thank you everyone so much for listening, sharing, and being a part of our growing community. Game on, wash your hands, listen to the doctors. Black Lives Matter, and we will see you next week.